are they taking a look at and somehow trying to aggregate employee data across data sets? What types of things would you suspect get looked at to make some sort of predictive analytics around career hopping and or job hopping? I mean, to me, it seems like it's some sort of a data lake, data pool type of a play.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's show, and if you are joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. We cover one of the vendors or the solutions, and for today we have Ceridian. They are one of the most known players in the HCM market, so we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my quick intro. Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, Dave, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Sure. Thanks, Sam. Hey, everybody. My name is Dave Chrysler, and I own an operations consulting business working with leaders, helping them to solve their productivity, quality, and inventory challenges, and to come to you with more than 25 years experience, various operational leadership roles. So excited to be here with you guys today.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Dave. Shrestha, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. My name is Shrestha Das, and I'm part of the marketing team at Elevate IQ. And I'm super excited to be here today. Thank you.
Okay, amazing, guys. So, sorry, I forgot your ticker, I guess. So now I'll do that right now, just for a second. I'll take that off. Apologies, guys. So, all right. If you're in the audience and if you have any sort of questions and comments, please make sure you guys post them. We are looking for any sort of relatable stories. If you have anything related to this particular solution, if you have experiences, positive, negative, it doesn't matter. Please do share them, and we would like to understand them, as well as we always use your insights and analysis as part of these reviews. So we are definitely looking forward to reviewing your questions as well as experiences. On that note, Dave, Shrestha, I'm going to start with the quick briefing. And I know that we have probably covered 4 or 5 different solutions in the HCM bucket. So we have done, I believe, SAP SuccessFactors. Then Workday, long back, I guess, Dave, you were there. Shrestha, I think you are fairly new to these panels. And then we have done UKG Pro as well, and then probably Oracle Cloud HCM. So this is one of the most popular, I would say. They are primarily in the mid-market, but now you might want to think that they are probably as big as Workday, because they have sizable logos, as well as their position is amazing. I mean, they have done a ton of acquisitions. They have a lot of revenue run rate right now, so they are a fairly sizable company now. So we'll discuss all of that, how they grew and how they evolved. But this is extremely promising solution in the HCM category. But overall, from the comparison perspective, I would probably put them in comparison with your UKG Pro. That is probably going to be the closest competitor in general. One of the layers that we saw, and I don't know, guys, so one of the things that we had covered with respect to your mid-market versus enterprise in the last session is that enterprise solutions are going to be slightly more technical. They are going to be slightly more configurable. With your mid-market solutions, you are going to notice a lot more layers with respect to your managed services, because these companies are not going to have know-how of HR internally. So they require that HR compliance expertise, and sometimes these solutions are filling that gap. If you are going to go for any of the enterprise solutions, you are probably relying on one of the partners, VARs, consulting companies to be able to fill that gap. The other things that we had noticed with respect to mid-market versus enterprise is some of the integrations are going to be pre-baked, pre-configured, especially when you talk about integration with job boards, or if you are let's say in the insurance industry and you have to comply with several different payers and providers. Sometimes you need to submit your payroll data. If you are going to be in public sector, not for profit, you need to submit your payroll data to your city. Construction businesses, they also need to submit a lot of payroll data to your city. So those integrations could be very expensive, even if you're going to get a platform. And if they don't support those integrations, that's where you are going to have a lot of challenges. So those are some of the differences between your mid-market and enterprise solutions. So here with Dayforce, and now they are called Dayforce because they have done rebranding. And there is a little background in that as well. It was a Ceridian company. They were much bigger. They acquired a new company called Dayforce. Dayforce was a much smaller brand, but they ended up rebranding. So as of today, they are called Dayforce. They are no longer called Ceridian. So again, this is a very interesting acquisition as well as branding story. I would say the similar story we saw, Dave. I don't know whether you recall this or not, but Blue Yonder, I believe, they had very similar story as well. That Blue Yonder was a very small company, but they ended up rebranding just because of that cloud native feeling that they wanted to provide to their customers. And I think this is a very similar trend as well as story here as well. So now with Dayforce, one of the trends that you're going to notice is they are not going to be as deep with the managed services. And because of that, now they are able to grow much faster in the other geographies. So they are able to serve a lot more geographies. And that's why I'm saying that they are probably looking like more of the Workday at this point of time in terms of providing that global coverage. If you go to your UKG Pro, the only thing you are probably going to get is North America. They might be able to support some more countries, but for the most part, they are probably going to be limited to that, especially if you talk about the compliance managed services offering that they have. The other things they might be able to cover more from the technical integration perspective, but they might not be able to cover the managed services, the HR compliance piece that the customers are probably going to need. So I'll pause there for a second. I don't know if you guys are going to have any sort of comments till now. Dave, no? Rasta, no? Okay.
Sam, one question. So, do you think Dayforce will have more compliance issue as compared to UKG Pro because it's covering more locations as compared to UKG Pro, which is limited to Canada and US?
So great question. And I think the onus is going to be on the customer. So technically speaking, if you really think about it, the question should be that, okay, are customers going to have more issues, compliance issues? That's a possibility. And the reason for that is because let's say if you're going with UKG Pro, you are sort of relying on them to be able to do your filing. Your filings are going to be automated. So hopefully you can count on them because they are doing it for a lot of different businesses. Hopefully they know they are keeping track of all of the laws and regulations. But now here you are either relying on third party or you are doing it yourself. So it's very likely that you might have compliance issues, but that is not going to be on Dayforce as such. Their responsibility is going to be to provide the technical platform. But then you are on your own. I mean, so yeah, so that's why, I mean, the managed services is very handy in the small to medium size businesses. I don't know, does that answer your question, Srishta?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Great question. Okay, so I'll keep moving here. So here, overall, when you look at the competitive landscape, so obviously their comparison is going to be UKG Pro, but they also have another layer that I need to touch on, and that is called WFM. And Dave, you are going to find this really interesting because one of the things that we have been discussing is what is the role of ERP in certain industries, whether ERP is really relevant or not. Okay. And that's where this whole layer of WFM is handy. And this is going to be handy in any sort of branch-centric operations. And one of the layers that you guys may have noticed in the last discussion that we had done related to your branch-centric operations, that their scheduling is going to be very different. Their comp structure is very different. They require far tighter integration with your HCM processes in general because you are dealing at the branch level. Now, when you look at the WFM, and WFM is supposed to be workforce management. Okay, and generally what that means is they are managing the whole scheduling piece for workforce, especially that scheduling is going to be more from the branch perspective. Okay, so any of the companies that are going to be slightly more retail centric, okay, that is going to be your, again, retail, healthcare. What else am I missing here? Banks, insurance, they are very branch centric. Restaurant, to some extent, media, I don't know, I mean, some companies maybe they're in that brand centric operations, but anything and everything that is going to have a retail outlet, that is probably going to fall under this category. Now let's analyze the role of ERP. Generally when you look at ERP, you are going to look at, okay, ERP is really good at my MRP, it's really good at your inventory, it's really good at scheduling. My ERP colleagues, every one of them are going to argue that scheduling means ERP. But now here in retail businesses, you have different types of scheduling. Okay, so number one scheduling is going to be of your warehouse workers. Now, does that fall in your ERP? My retail friends are going to argue that, you know what, that resides inside your WMS or the supply chain solution, right? So in this particular case, this is your branch level scheduling, because in this case, whatever is happening at the branch level, corporate does not even know about that. So this is a very different scheduling. The kind of comp structure you are going to have, the kind of challenges you are going to have, this has to reside inside your HCM component. And that's where your WFM becomes handy. So in this particular case, the role of ERP is very, very, very minimal. So that's why if you look at solutions such as your Workday, your even Oracle Cloud ERP, all of these solutions are very service centric, retail centric, because in that the only role of ERP is your financial reporting. That's it. That's the role of ERP. Everything else resides in the other layers that are going to be slightly more best of breed. So in this particular case, even if you look at Info WFM, the reason why Info WFM exists and why the name they have called Info WFM is because it was designed for that workforce scheduling. Now, if you look at the underlying layer of these companies, for example, Info M3, that is positioned for your retail. Okay, that is positioned for your apparel centric businesses. In those businesses, you are going to have very branch centric operations. So that's why Info WFM was really handy. So because the scheduling resided in that, the role of ERP was very limited. So this is a very interesting layer because these guys are really, really good at scheduling. We did not see this as highlighted with your UKG Pro. So we are going to be touching on that a little bit more in terms of how these companies manage their scheduling. And you are going to see some more newer industry, and they are going to be even more interesting. So we'll get to that. But overall, from the competition perspective, you're looking at Info WFM, you are looking at Oracle, ACM, SAP SuccessFactors. All of these are competition for your Ceridian. So now some other industries that we have related to your Ceridian, here you are going to find, for example, sports franchises. Okay, and Dave, I was having this, and I don't know if Anders is there in the audience or not. He generally attends these sessions, and we were discussing about, I don't know whether F1 or Formula One or some of those franchises, right? And how their processes are really bad, and they hired an IT guy, and they were arguing that they should be on ERP. And I was like, okay, that's a very interesting idea, but but here, if you look at their operations, the way they are structured. So if you notice, all of those sports franchises are going to be with Ceridian. And there is a reason for that, because they are trying to schedule, for example, let's say if you look at any of the football teams or baseball teams, okay, you are going to have your coaches, you are going to have your cheerleaders, you are going to have, I don't know what all. Number one, they are comped. Number two, you need to manage their schedule. So where do you keep that? You are not going to keep that inside ERP. So this is where HCM becomes far more powerful for these industries, because it's doing a lot more heavy lifting. And that's where your scheduling piece is going to be really handy as well. So I don't know if you have any counter comments there, guys, any sort of feedback? No?
I think you're spot on with all of that, Sam. I mean, it's interesting. It gets back to, for me, it gets back to the kind of the language barrier that we speak about, and in terms of how people utilize these terms interchangeably, because at the end of the day, it always means what we've already experienced. and and what makes this so challenging is that there is not a an overall certain level of clarity across all of this. So you really have to dive in to understand, what are we trying to do here?
Yeah.
And it's not so much about putting it into a bucket, but understanding what those process flows are, and ultimately identifying the most appropriate tool for that. Back to your point, whether that lives in a WFM, HCM, or an ERP. It's an argument to be had, but it's really based on what those process flows are. What are we trying to gain visibility and control over, and what's the best tool to help us do that?
Exactly. Great comment, Dave. So I'll keep moving unless you guys have any other comments here. So one other industry that is very interesting here is manufacturing. And manufacturing is interesting because for the most part, we have discussed the role of HCM in manufacturing industries. But here you're also going to see some trends related to your WFM. A lot of companies are acquiring these WFM capabilities, and the reason for that is the scheduling, especially if you are going to look at the branch level scheduling, is probably going to reside inside your WFM component. Even for shop floor, they are introducing near concepts of your WFM. So for example, Dave, I don't know whether you followed it or not, but QAD acquired a company called Red Zone. And Red Zone is technically a WFM solution for manufacturing industries. And the reason why they have acquired is because you need that in the process. If you don't have that, you are probably going to find challenges, and not everybody is going to keep their scheduling inside ERP. So it becomes a very interesting argument. I think IFS acquired another company that was also very similar to your WFM capabilities. I don't remember the name of that acquisition, but it was very similar to your QAD. So everybody is moving in this direction that you require your WFM capabilities, especially if you are going to be very branch-centric operation. And if you look at IFS's business model, they are also in aftermarket. And aftermarket, if you look at the way their business model is, you are going to have a lot of branches in that industry as well. So wherever you have branches, that's where you are going to find the utility for your WFM, just because the scheduling of your temporary workforce, the seasonal workforce is happening inside that. Agriculture is a very interesting category as well. So far, we have not seen agriculture for the most part. Sage probably maintains a lot of market share in the agriculture market. They have their own HCM component, but they also like to hang out with the other players in the market too. So I don't know which one they are hanging out, but here seeing agriculture is very interesting as well, because if you are going to have those farms, in my mind, they are all going to be very branch centric operations as well. They are very independent. They are going to have independent P&L, independent operations. Your sweet spot, Dave, independent control, I guess, for all of those farms and whatever they might be doing, even if they are doing what is that, green farming, greenhouse farming.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a couple of different. I could totally see that. You wouldn't necessarily put it into that same bucket, but to your point, it is kind of location specific.
Yeah.
And the other big challenge in these arenas, depending on the type of business, but you've got, you mentioned like restaurants,
Yeah.
let's say.
Yep.
A good friend of mine operates multiple car washes.
Yep.
Same type of thought process, and
Yep.
and that seasonality component with the workers makes it challenging for coverage. So a solution like this makes visibility, both kind of visibility from a leadership perspective, but then even at kind of the lowest common denominator, where shift swaps, location swaps, all of those types of things, that visibility gets opened up when you've got a solution like this implemented. Makes it easier for coverage, makes it easier to make sure you can meet customer demand.
Yeah, could not agree more. And I think we are going to see one of the case studies for a car wash business as well. And yes, that's a great fit for this business model. And that's where you are going to see a lot of trends related to your, what is that called? The tip, feature that we saw with UKG Pro. They were doing that as well. So you are going to see that with your Ceridian or Dayforce as well. But at the same time, you're also going to see additional features. For example, these guys introduced something called on-demand pay. Okay, and when you are working with these seasonal workers, temp workers, for them payment is probably going to be the biggest priority, because if you don't pay them, they are probably going to be borrowing from, what is that, payday loans, I guess.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's their best option. And if they are going to see something like this, then you create that employee experience retention that is going to be super critical in this particular space where talent is probably the biggest problem. So you are going to see a lot more features like this, with Ceridian. So I'll keep moving here. So overall, I guess the points I want to hit on this particular slide is, and this is, we are going back in time. This is in 2015. So they had roughly what 2,500 customers, and their growth was like what 60%. And 2015 is probably the year when we were just getting the taste of cloud, to be completely honest. There was no cloud in 2015. Infor was sort of there, but it wasn't there. Salesforce, NetSuite, they started in what, like 2008, 2000. No, Salesforce started in what, 1999, and I keep missing these dates. Dave, you need to help me here. So, Salesforce probably started in 1999, and NetSuite probably started around the same time as well. Probably Oracle acquired them, somewhere in 2008, I believe, right, Dave?
Yeah, I think it's
I keep mixing
2006,
now.
8, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So basically 2015 is when Acumatica, I would say, was coming up. Odoo was coming up. So the cloud was becoming the category. There were not many ERP systems that were sort of there in this space. HCM positioning is very different. I mean, there were some solutions, but not many. And at that time, Ceridian was really hit, obviously. So they started as more of the WFM category leader. They were not HCM before. So they, I had seen them installing their hardware outside of the facility, and they used to do the punch outs. A really interesting process. I mean, you would see them inside facilities, right? So that's how they started. They installed in manufacturing companies, also in the retail outlets, but then they grew in the ACM category. They developed all of those functionality. So one of the things, I mean, since they are from Canada, so obviously Canadian businesses are slightly different. You need to install these devices in the harsh conditions. So one of the major advantage that they had is for that. So we are looking at companies such as your, I don't know, steel foundries, where you are going to have tremendous amount of heat. In all of those cases, you are going to require hardware that is always going to work regardless of the weather conditions. And they had that, and that's how they sort of started. They also had very tighter alignment with MS Dynamics 365. Even today, I think they do really well. Microsoft does not necessarily have any sort of real HCM offering, so they are going to rely on these guys. They have some of the other HCM solutions as well as part of their portfolio, and that's where when you are going to have those intertwined capabilities. For example, let's say if you're looking for those union-centric capabilities for construction, I would say, architecture, engineering firms, and Microsoft is very well penetrated there. But the ACM capabilities, they are going to rely primarily on these guys. I don't have anything else I want to hit on here, unless you guys have any other comments. No, I think I'm pretty good. I'll keep moving. So here, some of the points, the branch ops, we have already covered that, this is very similar capability. I don't think we saw as much branch functionality or coverage in the enterprise solutions. I'm pretty sure they are probably going to have these capabilities as well. But these guys are winning a lot more with the branch-centric operations, and I don't know how unique these capabilities are going to be, but these guys seem to be really well penetrated in the branch-centric operations. I don't know how difficult the commission-centric functionality gets or the tip-centric functionality gets. Obviously, the majority of the enterprise players are going to say they can cover pretty much everything, but it gets very difficult, especially since their data model is going to be far tighter compared to these mid-market solutions. So they did IPO in 2018. So they are a public company. So we are going to have a lot more data available in general to be able to analyze. So again, this is a very liked company, I would say, on Wall Street, just because they have been able to grow. They are hot, and one of the highest revenue run rate, I would say, from the ARR perspective annually. They're already $1 billion company. So Dave, can you imagine? They are bigger than Apicor and IFS.
That's pretty wild.
It's wild. So again, these HCM, field service, EAM, as well as CRM categories, they are as big as ERP. People see them as app add-ons, but they don't understand how deep they can get and how broad they can get. So each of these are very independent categories. They are not meant to be just bucketed and shoved inside ERP. Okay, so I don't have anything else. I think we have already covered a lot of these grounds. I don't know if I want to touch on anything else here, unless you guys are noticing anything, any questions. No, I think I'm good. So here we have the distribution center schedule. And again, this could be very interesting. And I don't know, I have seen very interesting scenarios, and I don't necessarily have an answer for what is the right architecture, who should own what, to be completely honest. Because let's say if you look at retail operations, and I call retail as ERP less operations in general. They have never had an ERP, and I don't know if they really need an ERP because they are very transactional. They are very commoditized. They have issues. It's not that they don't have issues. Everybody has issues, but I don't know if ERP is going to be the answer for that. So I'll touch on some of the issues that retail generally has. For example, let's say if you look at the inventory warehouse planning, so that is going to be at the corporate level. You are going to have your merchandising planning that is going to be sort of collaborating that with the branch. So that's going to happen at the corporate level. But when you look at your branch operations, generally that is going to reside inside your POS, because you are running your branch inside your POS. So that sort of acts as kind of ERP. Okay, but then now, where do you maintain your workers, and how do you maintain their schedule? Generally, the schedule is not going to be maintained at the corporate level, even though they are being paid from your corporate function, but their schedule is happening at the branch level, because the other branches, they don't even know who's working on in what branch, what is their comp structure. Yes, there are going to be some guidelines in terms of how they are going to structure, but it's up to the branch how they want to manage these things for the most part. And that's why this has to reside inside your WFM solution, because here what you are looking for is the mobile experience. You are going to have your timesheet entry. Okay, now you are not doing timesheet entry inside your ERP, and ERP systems in general, they are not very mobile friendly. And even if you are going to have very cloud native ERPs, their mobile capabilities are very lean in general, and you don't want to expose your ERP to mobile unless you have a reason to do so in general. Okay, in some cases, yes, there are cases when they expose that, but for the most part, you are literally carrying the whole data model with you, and your transactions are so going to be so heavy that they are not necessarily designed for that mobile interface. That's why you need to sort of disconnect that. And in some cases, that disconnection is okay. And the reason for that is because you don't necessarily gain much value in adding all of these transactions, because unless you are doing some sort of costing, if your product is going to be very expensive, where you do care for your real-time costing, where it matters. For example, let's say if you look at distribution industries, or if you're building a very expensive equipment or a project, then your costing is going to matter. But not in these cases. You can do branch level accounting and you are probably going to be okay. So that's a real difference, and that's why they have very different architecture, very different needs in general. You are going to have things such as your call out days. Now, where do you host that functionality? How do you manage these exceptions? Okay, and this is a very different process, because that is going to have input on your payroll process. So how do you manage that? That has to be within your HCM WFM solution. And that's why, because that is going to have impact on your schedule, but this schedule is not necessarily impacting your shop floor as such. So that's why it resides inside your HCM WFM component. Some very interesting comp structures: wages as a percentage of sales per hour. Again, these are very retail centric KPIs. And again, they are going to be dealt at the branch level. They have their own sort of world. So how do you manage that? And again, that becomes very tricky. Generally, it is going to be managed at the branch level, and then they are simply going to report at the end of the day whatever they have done. But operations, they are being managed, inside your WFM solution for the most part. So that's the real difference. Any comments, questions? No? Okay. So some more interesting functionality. I don't think we have seen that before. So for example, let's say if you look at bucket of hours, and this is going to be, you can spread across days, and very interesting piece of functionality in terms of how you are going to utilize your bucket of hours. And there are some regulatory requirements in terms of what you are able to do. So for example, I'm going to read some of these comments here. So users can take that bucket of hours, say 50 hours to spend on labor, and then spread those hours across the days and hours in increments as small as 15 minutes segments. Can you believe this, guys? You are literally scheduling at the 15-minute segment level, and that is impacting your comp structure. Okay, now keep reading, because there are more issues here with respect to reporting in terms of how your compensation is going to be. So again, if you keep this in multiple systems, you are going to find a lot of issues. Here they are saying system can lock up a manager's shift plan if he or she over schedules on-call workers, alert managers that they have to pay on-call differentials. On-call differentials is a process, and that is governed per state, per county. You have to pay extra. There are rules, formulas around that. Do that computation, you'll have nightmares if you're a CFO. There, how much that premium is and how it would affect their labor spend. So that's the kind of functionality that we are talking about. By the way, because of these compliance issues, you are also inviting a lot of lawsuits, and lawyers are literally waiting for workers to call, and they'll work for free to be able to file these lawsuits for them. So again, very, very, very serious issues here. Ceridian often gains a foothold with retail customers with its workforce management system, and then tries to sell parts of the whole Dayforce HCM platform to users. Yes, that is right, but WFM is critical. That's bread and butter for retail operations. That's why they really like Ceridian. One significant development, retailers and WFM software vendors like Ceridian that sell into the market have dealt with in recent years is tighter compliance with federal and state labor laws regarding on-call workers. And that's a big deal, guys. And they are saying Fair Labor Standards Act in some states generally requires employers to pay higher shift differentials to such workers who, while not at work, can be called in with less than a week or 2 weeks notice. And the shorter the notice, the higher the differential. Can you believe this, guys? And if you don't pay them, you are in trouble. So that's how serious this issue is, and that's why this has to reside inside your WFM component, HCM component.
Yeah, I think somewhere in here, Sam, they said somewhere around 11,000 employees in that with their David's Bridal retail use case. So, I mean, imagine, having to make that number of calculations in that type of environment. I mean, that's the real value of a solution like this. It's one thing if you've got 50 people. It's another thing when you've got, 10,000 plus people that you're trying to manage. And, the majority of that, I'm sure, fell on some layer of leadership at the local, branch level. And I'm sure that there were, significant compliance issues with that, just trying to get your hands around it, let alone implement it appropriately and then roll all of that information up to corporate so it gets, transacted correctly.
Yeah, so I guess, in my experience, what I have personally seen is there are two ways of structuring this. Number one is going to be that either the branches are going to report the hours manually for each of the employees, whatever is happening, and at the end of the day, they are going to do a lot of data entry in the backend, and that's how they are going to compute the compensation. Okay, obviously, you're going to have a lot of issues because of that. Or the other case could be that these workers have their own mobile phones as well as the punch outs that they have right outside the store. So they are going to swipe the badge, and based on that, you are going to get all the data points that you are going to need from the compensation perspective, because you are going to have audit. And if during audit, if your data is not accurate, then you are in trouble. Because if you are going to do this handshake, somebody's sending data, somebody's entering it, some errors. How are you going to prove that the person was there or not there, I guess?
Yeah.
So it becomes very tricky, and that's why the whole badging system as well as the mobile phones is really handy, because you're going to get your data.
Yeah.
Interesting comment. Thank you so much, Dave, for that. Unless you have any other comments, we have some case studies here that we are going to review. So this one is Denver Broncos, and this is the sports franchise that we were talking about. So here they are saying Denver Broncos have selected Dayforce as its new human capital management platform. So obviously, so far, I don't think any of the ACM solutions that we have covered, we saw the case studies for these guys, and these guys do really well in this particular space. The reason for that is because, so for example, they are saying that during peak season, the Denver Broncos employ approximately 1,400 salaried and part-time employees. The part-time employees are going to have very different processes in general, including your corporate employees, football players, cheerleaders, and guest relations staff. We saw that with UKG Pro as well. They had similar capabilities, but we didn't see sports franchise logos as such. They also had capabilities for part-time workers, but again, I think there are going to be nuances for these businesses in how their schedules are going to be managed, because these guys are going to be traveling in different states, and you have to comply with those state and county requirement as well wherever the game is happening, I guess. Those complications are not going to be there with your retail, and the reason for that is because your branches are going to be at whatever location, so you kind of know that you have to comply with that state and county. Here you are sort of managing moving workers, I guess. And I think we see this issue in businesses like us, Dave, and I don't know whether you have experienced this or not. So, for example, and this is a headache, I'm telling you this right now, okay? So, for example, let's say if you are in a very professional services-centric business where you are going to be serving a lot of different clients, so generally what you are doing is you are traveling in many different states. So, if you are a very regional operation, and that's very rare for consulting businesses because they are traveling across the globe, I guess. And some businesses, they are probably traveling in North America. But let's say, for example, LFHIQ, we have our operations in New York, but let's say if we are going to have any employees outside of New York, okay, then we have to, number one, register with the state. Okay, you have to file the state taxes, you have to comply, and even if you are going to miss on one single filing, like literally one single filing, you are going to get the penalty of at least $25,000. They count in the multiples of 25,000 in general. That's how bad this is. And even if it is going to be like, okay, a person worked only for 2 hours in that state for whatever reason, but they have to collect those state and county taxes. That's why this problem becomes very serious. And that's why for these guys, it's even trickier.
Yeah, there's all kinds of complexities around this stuff, Sam. I mean, one of the kind of examples I like to call on. There was a company that I had worked with. This was years ago, but the situation was basically that people would come in early, and they'd clock in, then they'd go kind of get ready, grab a cup of coffee, use the restroom, and they really were not working. And it was kind of accepted, if you will, between employees and employer that, yeah, it's just easier to clock in because it's on my way to the restroom, it's on my way to the break room, I'm going to finish getting ready, and then I'm going to show up for work, and I'll be at work on time, ready to go. And it ended up being a pretty severe situation in terms of having to go back and rectify back pay in a scenario where people readily admitted that they were not working. Like, no, we're not working. We are not at work. And it created the situation where, people were not allowed to punch in until a predefined, and it was, something ridiculous, like 4.5 minutes or something, and then so what happened, right? You end up creating a situation where, back then you still had physical clocks. So, back then it was, you kind of had the stampede of 100 plus people waiting to clock out. And then the question inevitably became, Well, I was there. I was standing in line. You can't hold me to be tardy when I was standing in line of 100 people to clock in. I mean, so it gets wild with this
Yeah.
stuff, especially when it comes to upholding state and state guidelines, federal regulations, anything of the such. So
It's crazy. I mean, anything related to labor laws, it's a
yeah,
nightmare for businesses in general. So I'll keep going here unless you guys have any other comments. So here they are talking about enhanced predictive capabilities that analyze key factors linked to flight risk. And this is with Dayforce flight risk. Dayforce customers have tools to proactively address potential retention problems. Now, this is a new concept, guys. Now, you are going to be wondering, what the hell is flight risk? Okay, and here flight risk means how likely employees are they might be jumping into different companies, I guess. So this is going to be more of the attrition risk is what they are talking about. How likely are they, what is to fly, I guess. I'm not sure if I'm putting that expression right, but so it's a very interesting term that they have used to describe this. But I mean, this is really the attrition risk is what they are talking about. So they have some more comments here. So they are saying expected to jump from job to job and even from career to career in this recruiting environment. Companies that can identify their top performers, obviously they need to do that because talent is a real issue, especially in this particular space where you are going to have a lot of seasonal workers, and you are paying $20 an hour, so you are not going to have a lot of loyalty, I guess. Then we have their internal corporate data to identify employees who are flight risks, quantify the cost turnover, and more effectively make the case for investment in a culture of engagement and excellence that will help them attract and retain the talent. So again, it's all about retention. So they are taking different strategies to be able to, I guess, incorporate this, whatever they can do. Then we have some more comments here in terms of the number of customers. So we have, as of 2018, they had roughly 3,000 customers, but these customers are very sizable in general. And an increase of roughly 674 customers for HCM solution. That's a big deal, guys.
No, Sam, it's really interesting comments around this flight risk. It makes me wonder, how data is handled with a solution like this, because, it kind of begs the question, are they taking a look at and somehow trying to aggregate employee data across data sets? What types of things would you suspect get looked at to make some sort of predictive analytics around career hopping and or job hopping? I mean, to me, it seems like it's some sort of a, data lake, data pool type of a play, similar to what we've seen like, in the transportation side of the solutions.
Yeah, so any of the data layers or predictive solutions, you are definitely looking at the mixture of external data, at least to some degree. Okay, so here this is going to be your HR analytics scenario, and here the only thing they are able to do is HR analytics, right? This is a specialized branch of your analytics. In general, the enterprise they are going to have a lot more risks that they need to cover, but HR cares for this. So number one, from the internal data perspective, they are going to have their own data sets. What has been the trend previously based on whoever they hired and who are the employees that ended up jumping? So obviously they are taking that into account, but they are also going to have data available from cities, data available from labor unions, I guess. I don't know who all is
Yeah,
publishing.
this is just such sensitive data. It's a really interesting point for them to make. I feel like this is this is extra sensitive data.
So
Typically anything that lives in this sphere. So I don't know. It's really interesting.
yeah, so they are definitely anonymizing it. This is definitely not personal data,
Yeah,
but obviously this is related to a particular employee.
right.
Okay, and so it's a very tricky situation, I would say.
But definitely, reading between the lines a bit. But it's one, it is very interesting functionality, and two, as I would be very interested to understand more about, you know, does this open, some anonymous data for about your team to be shared? Is it, I would just be curious about this. It's a very fascinating piece of functionality.
Yeah, and I have a story to share from one of the books that I was reading recently. And Dave, in that they were trying to argue whether it is cool for retail companies to know if anybody is pregnant or not. Okay. And obviously, they are not going to know if the specific person is pregnant, but they are able to correlate a lot of different data sets. And that's how they are able to sell all of those baby products. So there was a case where one person started getting these promos and they suspected that their daughter was probably pregnant, and this was a big issue. They ended up filing lawsuit to this company that the daughter wasn't pregnant, and they ended up sending, and that was a big chaos because of that. But finally they learned that she was actually pregnant.
Wow, interesting. Yeah.
So it's crazy. I mean, technically, they are not necessarily using anybody's private data, but they definitely have intel and insights to be able to learn a lot about you. Is it legal? Not legal?
Yeah.
Don't ask me.
I think, that's a slippery slope, but, it feels that way. It feels intrusive, I think, for most people. And again, I love technology. I love all of the ability that it affords us. But this for me is pretty interesting. I'd love to pick somebody's brain about it.
It's crazy. It's crazy is what I can tell you. Okay, if you guys don't have any other comments, we'll cover some more stories, and then we can probably open up for comments. So here, this is the announcement for the UK market. So I think we had discussed this last time as well, that rolling out any of the ACM platform, or especially the payroll platform, that for different geographies is slightly different and difficult. Just because you need to comply with the state and city regulations, that is not going to be a challenge, as much challenge, I would say, in the ERP world. Yes, you have some challenge, but this is much bigger challenge in general, because understanding, maintaining these labor laws for each of those cities and counties and state is far more difficult for any companies. But you have a little advantage with this ACM solution. In general, the data is not as tightly correlated the way it is going to be in the ERP solution. So from the solution perspective, it's a little friendly. So meaning, if you acquire all of these capabilities, you are probably going to be okay in having that as, you can position that as one solution, and you are probably going to be okay. But you cannot do that with ERP. For example, let's say if you buy 50 ERP, put it in a box, that does not make it one database, because for the ERP, the way your planning is going to be, it's very different. Here, the planning is very different. You don't necessarily require that correlation among data sets. You are probably going to be okay. So that's going to be a real difference between your ACM strategy versus your ERP strategy. But here, they are able to expand it to UK market. And the reason why Ceridian is so successful is because they could acquire all of these capabilities in different countries, and now they are looking like Workday, and that's completely okay in the ACM category. It would not be okay in the ERP category. So they have combined all of this, and obviously the user experience is going to be a little tricky, but for the most part, you are dealing at the branch level, so you don't necessarily require that centralized user experience in the ACM category either. So again, if you're going to have a patchy solution, that's probably going to be okay in ACM category. I don't have anything else that I want to hit on this one, unless you guys have anything else. So this is another acquisition, and in this particular case, they have acquired two different companies, I believe. This is your Clearview Logics, and this is the decision support analytics and some more analytics. And then you require a lot more analytics in general for your workforce planning. Every single ACM category, they are trying to combine as much as possible. And then they have the PESA as well, and that is your AI powered personal career advisor. You have a lot more AI that is relevant in this particular category compared to other categories of software. One more case study here. This is education category. So they have a lot of logos in education as well. And education, in my mind, the business model is going to be very similar, but there are going to be unique challenges. And that's why in the education space, you are going to have players such as your Unit 4, Blackboard. Those are the players that are far more prevalent, because The teacher workflows are going to be very different. The kind of guests that you are going to have are going to be very different. The kind of event strategy that you are going to have is going to be very different in the education space. But seems like these guys are doing okay in the education space as well. They have more than 11,000 employees located in over 500 centers across Australia. So they are present there as well. So they can cover Australian market, which is wonderful. And then we have some more case studies here with respect to your UK, Ireland. So they have covered a lot of different markets where they are present again. And Dave, Srashta, I don't know whether you remember this from Oracle when we looked at their capabilities in different markets. I believe they had 12 or 15 countries in total. The majority of the countries, I mean, everybody is going to be present in US, Canada, UK, Australia. Those are given. Literally everybody targets them, right? The challenges are going to be in other markets. The most challenging markets always are your South America, okay, Eastern Europe, Asia. The reason for that is because these markets are so fragmented and so regulated that they become very challenging from the ACM category perspective. And that's why if you look at Oracle was present in India and China, but Ceridian right now is not going to be present in those two markets, even though they are present in a lot of different markets, including Asia.
Yeah, it looks like these guys are set to grow through acquisition. Just skipping ahead a couple of slides there.
Yeah, a lot of acquisitions, Dave.
Incredible.
So, yeah, and now this is a very interesting slide, okay? So I really wanted to cover this one, okay? So here, the whole Canadian federal pay system, can you believe this, is running on Ceridian. Obviously, it's a Canadian company, so Canada wants, I guess, Canadian companies. I don't know if there are incentives there, but obviously there could be factors. But at the same time, look at the scale. And we have one more story where they were talking about Phoenix. There was a big disaster in terms of the payment, and there were a lot of lawsuits in Phoenix related to labor laws. And they were talking about replacing the whole Phoenix pay system with Ceridian. Can you believe this? That's how powerful this is. Here they are trying to pay for 300,000 employees and more than 2 million Canadians. That's how powerful this platform is.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yes, they are looking very enterprise. And initially, when I was thinking that, I was like, okay, maybe mid market. They won't be able to do this big, but no, they have a lot of logos.
Well, it looks like they're growing the right way, though. I mean, a lot of times you look at this and you could see some sketches and some outliers in terms of strategy, but this seems to be very targeted, very concise. I mean, even one of these last slides with this most recent acquisition to bring in the LMS capabilities. So it seems like they're really, they're really dialing this in. So it'd be interesting. This was the first I had heard of this solution, so it would be interesting to kind of follow along and continue to watch these guys grow.
Yeah, we'll definitely come back to this. And I don't know if you are going to have any other comments, Dave, Srashta?
Go ahead, Trista.
What I've learned is it has covered different markets in many more locations as compared to other solutions. And also the functionalities are very labor centric, which I feel many industries which are brand centric and dealing with uh, uh, retail centric, for example, like retail centric industries can utilize this solution. And
Yeah, so very interesting comment. And Dave, I had one comment that I wanted to make on your comment, so I'll give you this, and then probably you can offer some more commentary there.
Yeah.
So now going back to your acquisition comment, in this particular case, this is okay. Now, I don't know whether you follow Constellation Software. These two are top companies on Wall Street. Jim Cramer, super fan, always talks about that, always recommends. Okay, two companies, very similar strategy, growing through acquisition. But in their case, it's going to be very different because they are trying to create an ERP company, and this is the ACM category. So people sort of think that, okay, every software is going to be same, but creating ERP company is very different than your ACM company. For ACM, this might be okay because your data sets are not going to be okay. They are going to be okay even if they are not going to be as correlated, as tightly coupled. That's why we run into a lot of issues, I guess, in the ERP world. So very interesting. People just don't know this, from the outside in general. They just don't understand the difference for them. two software, you can grow through acquisition, different problems, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean it's certainly interesting, but there's a vertical play for all of this. Like there's no need to muddy the water, so to speak. And the other interesting part with all of these things is, as these softwares and companies continue to integrate and grow through acquisition, it's like it's the conversation of the vertically integrated versus best of breed. Like it's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out, because in the right space, right, and we've talked about where this sits in the right space, these guys seem like they're doing the right things to get to that point, to move away from some of that, what I would consider probably lower mid-market, where they may have started, into that upper mid-market enterprise play, because who else is there? Like they could own that, going after and building this out in the way that it appears that they're building it out. Who else can service 11,000 plus employees at, 200, 300 locations and attack the problems from that branch specific standpoint, unless it's somebody like this, right? Like, I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, they are competing head to head with your Workday, SAP SuccessFactors, Oracle Cloud HCM.
Yeah.
Those four, I don't know if anybody else is there. I don't think UKG Pro can handle this amount of workload. Even though they were competitors, but now these guys are at a different place, I guess.
Yeah, seems to be.
More comments, guys?
No, not for me.
All right, guys, if you don't have anything else, that's a wrap. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another vendor or the solution. On that note, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.